Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by.
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Frisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, I'll talk a lot about the home teams. We'll talk about the Saints, the Pelicans. We'll talk about All-Star Weekend. We'll talk about the UNO Privateers, LSU, and Tulane. So we'll try to cover it all. Got great guests for you tonight as well. Jude Young is the voice of the UNO Privateers. He's also with WGSO Radio and SportsNola.com. Chris Hagan is with WVOE, Fox 8 here in New Orleans. And we'll look forward to a great show with these guys. Guys, welcome to the show as always. Thanks for coming down. Always like to start the show. Let the folks know a little bit about what you're involved in. Why don't you take it away, Jude?
Well, you mentioned it, not stealing my thunder, but I would like to start with the UNO Privateers men's basketball team in first place in the Southland Conference with 5 games to go in the regular season. Head coach Mark Schlesinger, his staff, and those players have done an amazing job, and they're a fun team to watch. 3 more home games left this season, starting at 4 o'clock. I know it's Mardi Gras, but 4 o'clock Saturday against Central Arkansas. Come out and support the local team in college basketball in Division I that's in the hunt for the big dance. They certainly deserve it. Of course, I also have my show on WGSO 990 AM radio every Tuesday and Wednesday night, 6 to 7 p.m. And Eric mentioned SportsNola.com. That keeps my hands in all the pots in local sports. Check out SportsNola for great analysis and information, high school, college, and the pros.
It doesn't matter. It's football, basketball, baseball. You got us covered with Fox 8. About all the great programming.
That's right. As you guys very well know, we really don't have a down season here in the New Orleans area, and we're just getting kicked up with baseball season. But as you mentioned, we'll be talking All-Star Game. We have a special coming up on Fox 8 tomorrow night starting at about 10:15. That is our All-Star Game special. We've got previews with Anthony Davis, Eric Gordon, some national analysis, so that should be very entertaining as well. And then the final play on Sunday, we'll recap the entire weekend. We'll dive into Saints with opening weekend for baseball, UNO basketball doing very well. A big scene and a lot to recap, so be sure to check out the final play.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on the front first. Talk about the Privateers. They've been pretty consistent this season. Sometimes when it's a little bit up and down, especially after the spotlight was kind of on them, the local media really put a spotlight on UNO after they started winning. But they've rebounded. They've righted the ship some, and it's a veteran team that I think has a real opportunity to go into the Southern Conference tournament and get to the big dance. Might be the only team in Louisiana making it to the big dance.
Could very well be. A veteran team, that's the important part. But on top of that, you wonder, they haven't won. This is new for this program that certainly hit the depths when Mark Schlesinger had to take over. You've got a senior and junior-laden team. That's all the main 8 who play are 4 seniors, 4 juniors, and they're learning as they go along. But they've won 3 in a row. They've dealt with the media spotlight, and now it's about themselves and their careers and leaving their mark on the lakefront and having something they can remember for the rest of their lives. And this is a team that gets it done lately, not playing their best offensively, but defense, gritty, winning those 50-50 balls. If you like a team that hustles and gives their all and is pretty balanced front court to back court, this is the type of team concept that you're going to enjoy watching, and hopefully they can seal the deal for a top 2 seed. We really want that number 1, obviously, in the regular season title because it's so important in the Southland to be in the top 2. You get a double bye, actually, into the semifinals semifinals. You only have to win 2 games to get that automatic bid. So a lot to play for down the stretch.
Yeah. Chris, you covered this team all season long. Really an unknown when we started the season. Nobody was talking about UNO basketball. Nobody thought UNO basketball would be a hunt possibly for the Southland Conference Championship, regular season, maybe winning the tournament, and possibly getting to the big dance.
Well, I was talking, like you guys said, I think that media spotlight can't be overlooked. I was talking with a buddy of mine, Sharif, who does sports here as well, and we were saying so many times we go out and we do these stories because a team rushes to success, and then all of a sudden things can start to slip away. Maybe it was a hot start, maybe it was a streak, but that's not the case with this UNO team. I think what you saw was a team that endured. They dropped a pair of games, but like you mentioned, they've won 3 in a row now, and it shows the experience. Yes, I think this winning is new, but when you talk to Coach Schlesinger, it's a progression. Before and last year, it's a lot of close games that they didn't come up with winning in the end. Then it's figuring out how to win those close games, and then all of a sudden you find yourself at a point where it doesn't come down to the last 2 minutes. Maybe it's the last 5 minutes, and you saw it with Southeastern. They were able to pull away last Saturday and have a really good victory there on the road against the Southeastern team that's probably a little underrated. They've been playing pretty well this year. So I think that experience goes a long way. You look at guys like Kristavius Gill and Eric Thomas. They can take the reins when it gets down to crunch time. Gill hit a couple big threes late in that game, and that's who you look to, and that's who's going to really right the ship, calm the storm, so to speak, at the end of those games and really push them to the next level, especially in tournament time. You're going to look for a point guard like Gill. You're going to look for a post presence like Thomas. You're going to need those guys to guide your team, and I think that can push them through the Southland Conference tournament, hopefully make some noise in the NCAA.
Yeah, that'd be really nice. Good dear friend of mine, a guy that's with me every Friday, Mike Mazan, on my radio show, mentioned a few weeks ago, UNO, the cradle of coaches. And if you really think about it, and you go back in the history of the University of New Orleans, on the basketball side and on the baseball side, how many great coaches have come through UNO? Mark Schlesinger is the next great coach at UNO. The hope is, and I know his commitment to the city of New Orleans, is he'll be here for the long term, even with the success he's had.
I hope we're having that conversation about bigger schools wanting to take Mark away from the lakefront, because that means they're accomplishing these big goals. He has dug in. He married a local girl and built his home and family close to Lakefront Arena. This city is very important to him. And if UNO can grow and have success and the revenue grows with it, then Mark Schlesinger can be made comfortable and stick around. We hope for that. But you mentioned the great history of this program and baseball as well. But of course, Ron Maestri was there for 3 decades, came back and helped put the program on solid ground, and now Blake Dean is taking it to another level. That history is great, but basketball, whether you talk about Tim Floyd, Tick Price, Buzz Williams even had a stopover for a year, and he's doing extremely well, having moved on to 2 major programs. And now Mark Schlesinger, it's a place where you can win, and the Southland's a really good fit right now, because I think this program, this school, this city, recruiting against the others in the league in basketball and baseball, can have a great deal of success, and we're finally seeing the benefits of that.
Schlesinger's done a great job, no doubt about it. You know Blake Dean very, very well. Blake Dean is kind of the first one last year kind of put UNO back on the map with the baseball team. So, but really 2 really, really good coaches out on the lakefront right now.
And I think a common denominator with both of those coaches is that they take pride in New Orleans. They take pride in wearing New Orleans across your chest. That was a big thing that Coach Schlesinger talked about when I went out and spoke with him a little while ago. It carries on to the players. They take pride in it. They take pride in what they're doing on the floor, on the field. Blake's done a tremendous job in really making a gritty team, a scrappy team. They know, where their weaknesses are, and they came together to kind of master some of those last year. Got out to a great start. It's not an easy baseball conference, and they pushed through. Had a disappointing finish, but I think now they know what they need to do. They know what they need to do to take that next step. Challenge comes in, you're not going to catch anyone off guard anymore. They know what this team brings, the experience that they bring back in the lineup and in the field. Those guys are going to be looked to for leadership as well as Blake, so it's going to be a fun year.
Guys, we're on the cusp here in New Orleans of hosting our 3rd All-Star game, once again proving that New Orleans is a destination city when it comes to hosting big events, especially sporting events, and this will be no different. Most of the players and of course, the NBA hierarchy will be descending on New Orleans within the next 24 hours. Although I don't feel the buzz in the city right now that we saw maybe in the first 2 games, you can't discount what a great weekend it's going to be here in the city. Something that a lot of All-Star visitors have never experienced. They've been to Vegas, they've been to other cities, but they've never experienced New Orleans at Mardi Gras. It's going to really be a great marriage this weekend with both events.
I think locally it snuck up on a lot of people in this town, thinking about Mardi Gras, not realizing what happened a few months ago with New Orleans taking the All-Star game after the NBA pulled it out of Charlotte for political and controversial reasons. But it's about to be the shining jewel, I think, of what New Orleans does with sporting events, to be able to do something like this on short notice, even though there's recent experience, and dealing with Mardi Gras, and it's more than likely going to come off without a hitch. Because what would you expect with the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation and what they do in particular, in the city so used to hosting big events? It's going to be, I think, something that people look back upon and say, maybe as far as hosting sports, New Orleans' finest hour, because the city was built for something like this. And hopefully those all-star visitors get that taste of Mardi Gras and want to come back for more.
Yeah, no doubt. Chris, that's one of the great things about covering sports in this city. You get a chance to be able to cover a lot of these big events, whether it's NCAA basketball, Super Bowls, All-Star games. We see it over and over again. Talk about your impressions so far of the All-Star game here this time around.
Well, what's great about the All-Star game, it's not like it's necessarily a championship game where you've got two fan bases from two specific parts of the country. You've got a great sample size of fans, players, coaches, media coming in from all over. It's a perfect chance to spotlight New Orleans for all of the big events that they want to host in the future. And obviously, they want to get the Super Bowl back here. This is another great opportunity to show what New Orleans has the capability of doing and remind people why New Orleans is one of the best Super Bowl destinations. I saw a list the other day of New Orleans being the best NFL city, and it's not a fluke. It's because people come here, they have a great time. The support behind all local sports is incredible here. People really get behind it, and so it's going to be a great weekend and an excellent showcase.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And of course, Anthony Davis being a starter. We've seen this before with Davis. We've seen it with Chris Paul and David West being part of the All-Star game when it was here in New Orleans, and adds a little local flavor to it as well. And for Anthony Davis, an opportunity to maybe hope he plays very, very well, as we all expect him to, and maybe can hold up that MVP trophy at the end of the weekend.
And he said publicly he wants to be the MVP of the All-Star game this time around. And when that happens and you're the hometown guy, your teammates tend to try to facilitate that for you. So this another showcase for Davis, because unfortunately he doesn't get that on the national level, playing for what's been a mediocre team. I hope that this helps. These past All-Star games don't seem to have had a great effect for New Orleans' reputation as a destination city in the league. But you think at some point, if guys, the stars keep coming here and having a great time, that at some point it would help out. At some point it would be a deal where finally free agents would go, this is a great city. Why do we look down on it as a small market that's not a place that we want to live and spend our time? Maybe this helps, and I'm kind of surprised, and I guess I can't read those minds, and I certainly don't have those wallets to understand why they think the way they do, but I hope maybe this is another bump, because that's going to be the key. Signing a big free agent or two down the line while Anthony Davis is still here is the solution to keep him here long term.
Well, let's talk about that, Chris, because if you're winning and you put a winning product on the court with a superstar like Anthony Davis, they will come. They'll play with Anthony Davis. It's not like we're so far south where, again, players don't want to come. You look at the NFL, players want to play in the deep south. They want to be in the nice weather. We've got great culture down here, great restaurants, a lot to be able to offer to a professional athlete that wants to come. Not to mention the cost of living here in New Orleans is much lower than most, if not all, major sports cities, with maybe the exception of maybe Green Bay. But it goes back to the organization and the inability of this organization, especially under Dell Demps, to be able to build a winning franchise. And I think that's the deterrent to having anyone free agent coming to New Orleans and play alongside a great player like Anthony Davis.
I think, no doubt, Anthony Davis is going to be doing at least a little bit of recruiting while he's got all these stars in town. But, you look at the so-called small market franchises in the NBA. Oklahoma City is not far from being a New Orleans in terms of that small market franchise, but the appearance is much bigger because they had superstars like Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Last summer I was saying if Russell Westbrook didn't re-sign there and sign that extension, they all of a sudden become a place that nobody wants to go to. But because you have Russell, I think there's still a chance for them to have something special there if they can draw another KD-like star should he return. So that being said, I think New Orleans is close. You've got Anthony Davis. He's top 2-3 player in the league. You've got Drew Holiday, who can be, and he's shown the potential to be, I think you're maybe an outstanding draft pick, a star at small forward, a good free agent signing away, plus bringing Drew Holiday back, from really turning the page. I know you keep saying that and you keep saying they're close, but at the same time, it really is for this team because of Anthony Davis and because of how good he is and because he's entering his prime. If they can at least show the potential and use maybe this weekend to show the passion that the city can have for the team and for basketball, it can go a long way in getting a guy here that can turn this franchise around.
Oklahoma City is such a great case study for trying to read the minds of superstars in the league. When we saw Durant and Westbrook there together, most people figured Durant was the type of personality that would stay and make it his team, and Russell Westbrook was going to go back to the West Coast, go to L.A. when he was a free agent, and be a star with the Lakers. It wound up being the exact opposite because you just don't know how guys are going to react. But both of them did have difficult decisions because the organization has been winning. The Thunder have been successful, and success breeds that confidence that we're going to keep winning, and that's why San Antonio can be a powerhouse for so long and be attractive to free agents. And New Orleans hasn't had any of that, and people need that guarantee, and nobody's going to roll the dice and say, I'm going to start the winning there, because they're going to have the natural questions that we have, which is this organization aligned to ever be that successful?
Well, and guys, I mean, it comes down to the direction of the organization. You look at a franchise like Oklahoma City, they struck gold in the lottery, and they built that team through the lottery. The Pelicans, outside of being able to, get an incredible coup in getting the first pick in the draft as Tom Benson buys this team, Anthony Davis comes in, you think, okay, all of a sudden, here they go. You've got an owner with deep pockets. You've got a situation where they've already won a championship with the New Orleans Saints. He no longer, as an owner, has to be able to fight the crosstown team, because now the crosstown team is his for, the sports dollar here in New Orleans. And you're thinking all of a sudden there's going to be this meteoric rise of this franchise. It has not been that way. They have not had a true direction. They've had this win now attitude. Every move that Dell Demps has made, he's kind of stumbled. You can say maybe they weren't the right moves, maybe it was injuries. All those things were a factor there. But again, the fact remains that this is a team that's had one winning season under Dell Demps. Monty Williams loses a power struggle. Since Monty Williams has left, they have not won. And of course, you got a guy in his prime in Anthony Davis. And look, it's going to be difficult to be able to ask or to even Anthony Davis to be able to woo someone to play with him here in New Orleans until they start winning. And I think, the fact that the franchise has been paralyzed from the top down in terms of what direction this franchise is going to go, I think that has a lot to do with where we are right now. The Pelicans at 23-34, 2.5 games out of the 8th seed in a very, very bad Western Conference, especially the bottom end of that Western Conference. And quite frankly, an NBA fan base right now, the casual NBA fan base, who have kind of checked out.
It comes down to, you mentioned direction. The one part of the direction we know from the front office and Dell Demps has been, hey, you can't mine for gold in the draft when you don't have the tools and trade them away. They haven't really tried to do that over the years, and they've gone for the quick fix trades. And it's not that they don't have assets on hand, but look where they've gotten themselves now. Drew Holiday, Tyreek Evans about to hit free agency, Amir C. And you're stuck with him. He's a negative asset at this point. Right, and that was all done through trades. So now they're in this situation where Dell Demps is still fighting to prove that he can win here, still fighting for his job, and grabbing that 8th seed is going to help him. Will that help the Pelicans long term with the deal that he makes? He's looking at these players that aren't superstars that can help the bottom line right now, but are they long-term assets you want to invest in this time around, whether it be Okafor with the 76ers, a guy in Lopez with the Nets who has helped them win and is an injury-prone big man. So, I mean, those type of question marks, and Dell Demps is still the guy in the end who's making these decisions. I can understand why the fans are saying, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
And it's a fact that the show last year, they had a trade deadline. They made no moves and lose Ryan Anderson and Eric Gordon, two very attractive pieces that you could trade away. And so I think coming up on it again this year, you're looking at a pivotal time when you have to make a decision. I know Alvin Gentry said Drew Holiday is going to be a priority in free agency, but if he happens to leave in free agency and you don't trade him right now, then that's another big loss, because he's a valuable piece. He's worth a draft pick. He's worth something that can improve this team for the long run, and in a much deeper draft than last year coming up this year. You've got to have your eye on them as what are they going to do, because they're taking 2 steps forward and 2 steps backward. They're not going anywhere right now in this playoff race, and so you got to look at it as what can get us over the hump, what can get us maybe not just to the playoffs, but actually make us a contender.
You know, guys, and I've said it before, both the radio show and this show, it's a mortal sin in the NBA what Dell Demps did last year. To say that because of the new salary cap and then the salaries that were skyrocketing, and of course the ability for teams to have more money to spend, that again you don't need to be able to deal off expiring contracts, makes no sense. Even and then he said that again he couldn't get value for either Gordon or Anderson. Look, I don't care if you got to get a 2015 first round pick and it's protected. You get something. You don't allow those guys to leave for nothing. And now they're healthy in Houston, playing well over there. Things, the type of play that you thought you would have here in New Orleans, those guys, it just didn't happen. Now you look at the situation we're in right now. You just mentioned it, Drew Holiday and Tyreek Evans. What do? They don't guarantee that even though the organization acquiesced and made sure that Holiday felt comfortable with, again, the problems that he was having at home with his wife, with that obviously the tragedy of the brain tumor and the child. And look, they did the right thing. Take care of your family, then come back when you're ready. But that doesn't automatically mean that Drew Holiday, who would like to win and never won really in his NBA career for the most part, wouldn't want to go elsewhere. They've got to figure out what they're going to do. The problem is, do you trust Dell Demps to make these moves? And then when you look at the NBA right now and you look at the Pelicans roster, how many assets do they really have? I mean, they've been flirting with Brook Lopez, with Okafor for the past 2 weeks, and nothing's gotten done. And every time we turn around, we're hearing that the ante is going up and up and up. Well, how much is too much for players that, again, have some weaknesses as well? It's just interesting to see how this franchise is going to get out the rut they're in, especially with, again, someone that is, and it's unprecedented in NBA circles to have a general manager to be able to not be able to rebuild a franchise once but twice, but really have no skins on the wall.
Right, and Holiday is the fulcrum, I think, for the future of this franchise. How you handle it and how it works out, because you don't know whether when he's a free agent, will decide to stay here or not. And how much do you pay him? He's your number 2 player, right? Are you going to pay him a max contract because you have to? You're desperate to just be relevant, or you're trying to build something? I think Tyreek Evans, if you can get something for him, you should trade him, because you mentioned those 2 assets last year. It was clear that Eric Gordon wasn't going to stay here, and the writing was on the wall with Ryan Anderson that he wasn't going to either. So they made a big mistake times 2 there. They've got to do something with Evans, and they've got to be sure by the 23rd of this month, when the deadline rolls around, what they're going to do with Holiday and how much they're willing to pay him. And the question is, does Demps have the right mindset as far as Holiday for the future of this franchise?
And will Dell Demps be here, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a layered issue as well. I mean, this is a team that's stuck in that limbo of, can they make the playoffs? Will they tank? You don't want to tank because, as you know, fan support, it can be fickle, especially with basketball in this town. It can go the wrong way. At the same time, do you want to get in the playoffs just to be swept? I will say being under 500, getting in the playoffs, even if you're swept, is a whole lot better than being under 500 and missing the playoffs. So I think there's a notion of, are they scared to really have the bottom fall out? Because if you trade Drew, you're not going to win this year, right? So it's kind of weighing some kind of success, getting a little bit better, maybe if they play better, but still not being a contender, versus really bottoming out and having people really question everything in the organization. So it's a tough decision to make.
Well, it's an interesting dichotomy here, because on one hand, it's self-preservation. If you're Dell Demps, at the end of the day, in a bottom-line business where you've been able to really kind of skate around the possibility of being fired, even after the power struggle with Monty Williams, you know, if you make the playoffs, then you can sell it to the fan base, hey, we're getting better. You're telling Anthony Davis, hey, you've made the playoffs, you made the postseason. So on that end, you say, okay, that's good for maybe the organization today. But for the long-term view, the long view on this, man, this year's lottery is going to be full of talent. And the opportunity to be able to pair Anthony Davis with one of these young players that's coming out of school this year, again, that's hard to be able to pass up. And if you do make the 8th seed, well, then you don't have a chance to be in that top 3.
Right.
So what are you looking for? Instant gratification or a long-term winning plan that again, keep basketball in New Orleans and keep the fans interested in what's going on in a football town?
Guys, tanking's not an option because Anthony Davis is not going to accept that. So you take that right off the table. But you mentioned the importance of this upcoming first-round pick and draft picks in general, because these assets out here from other teams, they want draft picks. And you mentioned the scuttlebutt of the number of draft picks going up. Pelicans cannot afford to do that, because that's the one area where if they can have a little bit of good fortune, they can build something, because they'll control these players for 4 to 5 years. They have to have that, because they right now have to assume that they're not going to get the job done in free agency.
And guys, I mean, when you look at Dempsey's track record, he's done well in terms of building a bench. Guys that have come here from the D-League, guys that have been cast-offs from Europe, other places, they've come to New Orleans, they played well, they parlayed that into contracts elsewhere. Monty Eunice coming in this year, Terrence Jones coming in this year. These guys came in for almost nothing. I mean, you can almost say that, again, Houston and New Orleans kind of flip-flop players, but again, Houston's kind of overpaying for theirs. New Orleans has some bargains in both these guys, but at the same time, it's just not enough to be able to get this team over the hump and be a consistent winner, even with a guy like Anthony Davis. And I think, again, part of the reason why we're seeing the apathy here in New Orleans is the frustration of the fan base believing, hey, we got once in a lifetime superstar here, but the organization is not doing enough to surround him with players that can make him successful to have a consistent winner here in New Orleans.
The patchwork is just not getting it done. And then, like you mentioned, guys like Monty Eunice and Terrence Jones, they have played big roles. They've come off the bench and given a spark. Monty Eunice, I think, is a guy that makes an impact just about every night that he's out there positively. And that's another piece that, that's been a part of their success this year and gotten them a couple wins, especially in Anthony Davis' absence, when he was going through a couple injuries in January. And so those guys may not be here again next year, and so there's other places to fill on your bench. I think number one has to be Drew, but like you guys have mentioned, the draft is going to be huge this year. I think whatever assets you can get, there are teams, there are contending teams, there are teams that are close to being contenders that would love to probably have a Drew Holiday or a Tyreek Evans. Maybe they give a draft pick, a late pick in this draft would be good. So there's teams out there that I think they can strike a deal with. Like you mentioned, the ante is going up, and it's just going to get tougher the longer they go. It seems like every deal, every midseason deal, they drag their feet. It doesn't get done.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, Anthony Davis this week once again professed his love for New Orleans, his love for the organization. He wants to be here. He wants to build a winner here in New Orleans. The national media grilled him on this, okay? And then you start getting around other guys that again in that fraternity of superstars that are going to be here this weekend. And you know how it's been lately with, again, the NBA players teaming up, wanting to put these super teams together. The question is, if they continue on the track right now, this rudderless ship, how long can Anthony Davis stay happy? I know he's 23 years old and he's making more money than I ever thought he'd ever make. He lost a tremendous amount of money last year. I mean, no one walks away from that type of money. Is it $25 million?
$25 million.
Okay, and not have their feelings hurt just a little bit here. So the question is, how long can you keep him happy, and how quickly can you turn this around, and can you do it with the present cast of characters that's running this organization?
Well, the question is, does Dell Demps have a 3-year plan? Because in 3 years, that decision time with Anthony Davis.
Gosh, I hope he's not here for 3 years.
Right.
I got to be honest with you.
He is the man in charge right now, so he better have a legit 3-year plan. And if he does, it's going to involve keeping first-round picks. It's going to involve continuing to be a diamond in the rough finder, because that's what he does well.
No doubt.
And Chris talked about it. He's built a nice little roster of guys who can fill out 4 through 10 on your roster, but you need 2 and 3. You've got to have a couple of more guys who are go-to guys, who are great players with Davis. That's why the decision of how good is Drew Holiday really? Are we going to saddle ourselves with an okay point guard who's middle of the road in the league, or is he going to continue to get better, and is he part of the solution? That's the mindset that Dell Demps has to have right now, of knowing at this point, I trust that he's going to stay healthy or I don't. I trust that he's going to continue to get better or I don't. And I know where he ranks in the league and what he's worth. Demps needs to prove he's able to do that because he's made some mistakes in the past. And if any big money comes free and it's time to be spent after Holiday, if you get the Holiday decision wrong, New Orleans won't be attractive enough to have anybody take your money.
That's right. Yeah, if you get the Holiday decision wrong, it's money you can't bring in for another guy. If you don't have Holiday and you go to the draft, I think this is a tremendous guard draft. Kentucky's got two that are going to be top 10 picks. And so I think that's where New Orleans needs to address that. Like Jude was saying, you need that 1 through 3. You need a solid top 2 or 3 guys, because should they ever get to the playoffs, that's what it's going to be. You can get away with winning some games in the regular season. You can go about 500 with what they have here if they play at the top end of their potential. But going forward, Anthony Davis needs to see that star power, because that's the teams that are winning. That's the way the NBA has gone. That's the way it's going to be. I'm not always a huge fan of it, because I think it's eliminated some competition. You look at the West, there's really 2, maybe 3 teams that have a shot. In the East, there's 1, maybe 2. And so it's tough, but if you want to be in that conversation, that's what you've got to do, is go out and get a superstar. You've got to decide, do we want to be good enough and make the playoffs, which it seems like they're content with that and they're even struggling to do that, or do we want to be a contender?
And guys, there's always seems to been a disconnect between the head coach and the general manager in terms of the type of players the head coach needs to be able to run his system. There was a disconnect between Monty Williams and Dell Demps on what he needed to be able to run his grinded out system. There's a disconnect between Dell Demps and Alvin Gentry right now on the type of free flow player he needs to run his system. So again, it's almost deja vu all over again is what we're dealing with right now.
Well, it's a real question mark if Dell Demps understands what Alvin Gentry needs, because when Demps made the decision to basically start a power struggle, we assume, or maybe it was Monty Williams, but you would think Demps was arguing, hey, this style doesn't fit the modern NBA, because Monty Williams was much more about playing at a slower pace and trying to focus on defense, even though the results defensively didn't show it. Monty Williams had an idea and a plan. Now, Gentry is the modern NBA coach. He wants to get up and down the floor. He wants to play smaller lineups. He knows the importance of being dangerous from the arc. So Demps is trying to build that roster for him, but I'm going to say that what happened in free agency this year, when all these teams, because of the new TV contract nationally, had more money to spend, had a lot more to do with the lack of attractiveness of New Orleans versus the others in the market than anything else as to why certain players were signed, Solomon Hill, that you wonder why they were signed. And it doesn't make sense. Right. But you had to sign somebody. You had to fill out the roster with some players that can make you better than what you were going to be playing with just guys off the street who hadn't played in the league. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you don't win and you're not attractive, you keep not winning, not being attractive, unless you get the draft right. And what's happened in the last 5 years, a lot of draft picks have gone bye-bye.
And more Hill and Galloway work if you've got that Robin to Anthony Davis's Batman. Again, the roster filled out with some decent players that can back up, but you still need some players that are feared in the NBA. And I don't think outside of Anthony Davis you've got that on this roster.
Yeah, it's the small forward. It showed their desperation in paying Solomon Hill that money, mainly because they had to. You don't have Quincy Pond next year. You're struggling out there with Dante Cunningham defensively, and so it's the desperation for the small forward. It's the lack of attractiveness, and they need to go out and land that player. And it's been a struggle. I think you can see the frustration with Alvin Gentry. He said a couple weeks ago, or maybe even sooner than that, that he wasn't even really able to grade this team yet, just because of the injury, because of the lack of consistency of getting guys out on the floor. And I agree and disagree with that. I think that sometimes you've seen enough from this team to know kind of what their top end is, but at the same time, he's right. It's hard to have some sort of consistency when you can't get guys on the floor enough, even Anthony Davis at times.
But then, and again, as we close and we go to break, also you handcuff yourself with bad deals. The Amirashik deal, again, you were basically bidding against yourself there, and you overpay for him, and now you're stuck with a guy that can't play in your system, that is a player that's on the downside of his career, and he's making $10, $11, $12 million a year, and he's almost impossible to get rid of. You finally put Alexis Agenza back on the floor. Maybe that's a byproduct of realizing you're not going to get a center in the open market right now, but yet again, he's been at the end of the bench. So again, I go back to the disconnect between what the coach needs to be successful and what the GM is giving him to be successful. And Look, it's a merry-go-round right now. Hopefully the Pelicans will find their way because, look, when there's good basketball to be seen in New Orleans, fans will come out and watch this team play. It's been proven with the Jazz, whether it's the Hornets or the Pelicans. New Orleans may not be a football town, but they look and love basketball, and I think that's one of the keys. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night with our live broadcast right here on WLAE-TV. A rebroadcast every Friday night at 10 p.m. on WLAE-TV and statewide on Pelican Sports Television. Chris Hagan is with us from Fox 8. Jude Young from SportsNorth.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Networks, diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or amcofencecompany.com.
TikTok Cafe, located on Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie, is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our menu offers breakfast dishes like our Western omelet made from scratch, biscuits, grits, eggs sunny side up, and lunch specials like our homemade cheeseburgers with a side of golden brown fries. Don't forget about our weekday lunch special and that every Tuesday is steak night. TikTok Cafe, open 24/7 at Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, we're joined by Jude Young and Chris Hagan. Guys, good news for the Saints. Morton Anderson finally in the Hall of Fame. I think he's the greatest clutch kicker of all time. Period. The end. There's no one better. I'll take you first, Jude. Your thoughts, your memories of Morton Anderson. And I think the overriding theme here in New Orleans was it's about time he gets in.
Yeah, and 4 straight years as a finalist, it was inevitable. And I think this class for Canton this year was a little bit light, so you could see the door opening for the Great Dane to be in the Hall of Fame. And there's no question that he took kicking to the next level, I think, in the NFL, being the true kickoff threat, the long bomber that could hit a 55-yarder to win you a game. He did things like design his own kicking shoe in order to perfect the craft through the 80s and the 90s, and what people nationally didn't understand, or they would have voted him in the Hall of Fame a lot sooner, he carried this franchise. He carried a team that had a mediocre offense and the dome patrol with a great defense, and he won low-scoring games often to give the Saints the opportunity to be a winner for the first time and consistently win under Jim Moore. And oh, by the way, he was pretty good with the Falcons and a couple of other teams, too. I'm glad Morton got in, and if you've ever dealt with him, he's a great guy. Fans who have gotten a chance to see him at Saints Hall of Fame events and locally when he comes to town, he is just as good of a person as he is the great kicker that he was.
As a native New Orleanian, your thoughts?
Yeah, you can't deny that he certainly deserved it. Leading the NFL's leading scorer, it's hard to believe it took him this long. And like you said, there were some tough classes in there. But I wonder, and you got to think, if he kicked in today's NFL, how much more value he'd be. I mean, he was obviously incredibly valued, but you look at the struggles that kickers have today, and that makes you really appreciate what he was able to do throughout his career, the longevity of his career, and the constant level that he was able to kick at, which I think maybe was taken for granted at times. But now you see it's not just a valuable asset at the end of games or going into halftime or making clutch kicks. It's extra points. It's everything. And so I think truly deserved.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll take you first, Chris. Training camp back in Metairie now. I think it's a good move. I've said before, the state of Louisiana taxpayers built that facility. One of the reasons why that facility was built was so that they'd have training camp here in New Orleans. For years, Tom Benson complained about not having a state-of-the-art training facility. He has that now. The taxpayers have paid for it. the give back on that is to have training camp here in New Orleans. Your thoughts?
Well, I think fans will certainly love it. They've been calling for it for years now since it's gone to the Greenbrier. Obviously, things haven't really gone as planned in terms of the regular season, finishing 7-9 each year with the Greenbrier. So coming back to New Orleans, I think it's a great move. I think this is a year that the Saints kind of view as a make or break. We've talked about this on your radio show before. So bringing it home, really, I think focusing in, and I think when you're in your own facility, when you're at home, when you look up and you see a familiar spot that you're going to see all regular season, I think that kind of allows you to focus in a little bit more, and hopefully the results pay off for them.
And normally, we have to disclaim sometimes, especially when we're doing talk radio, and this is a similar format, that we're not psychiatrists, but we play one sometimes on radio and TV. This is about the evolution of Sean Payton, post-Super Bowl, post-divorce, this point in his career in New Orleans. I think the Greenbrier could have worked out, but it didn't. And preparing for a season at a resort, I don't think is the right direction to take for a team that at the time you were there was mediocre and still is right now if you look at the record, look at the roster. So I think this is another step in this offseason that says that Sean Payton is ready to mix it up and to make the proper changes to be able to have a situation where this team is hungry again. He's changed his staff in a major way and gotten rid of coaches that are close to him. Now he gives up his baby. He wanted to be at the Greenbrier, to come back home, practice a bit more in the heat. Yes, you do have the indoor facility. I think it's the best possible plan to bring this team together so far in the offseason. Clearly, free agency is going to be the next important step.
We'll stay with the new coaches for a minute. Mike Nolan comes in to coach linebackers, former head coach. Curtis Johnson back to coach wide receivers. Again, former head coach at Tulane University. Bradford Banta comes in as a special teams coordinator. Ryan Nielsen is a college coach coming from, I believe, North Carolina State. He'll coach the defensive line. Do you like the new staff that's come in? It's going to be a new voice, maybe some new thoughts in that locker room in terms of schematics, getting ready for games, etc. What are your thoughts?
I think teaching is so important and sometimes forgotten at the NFL level at certain positions. Saints haven't done a very good job of developing young linebackers overall. You look at Joe Vitt in his many years here and you say, at some point, that's the common denominator. Mike Nolan's a proven excellent defensive coach in the league. So you have a guy who's been a coordinator and a head coach. That's a real value guy. I like the Ryan Nielsen move because he's somebody who's been teaching at the college level for many years and is highly regarded as somebody who can bring along players like Sheldon Rankins, David Onyemata, Tyler Davis, and those defensive tackles in particular. Now, hopefully the Saints can supplement that with the edge pass rush talent that they're lacking up front so Nielsen can do his job. And clearly Curtis Johnson, who doesn't like CJ, and he was here for Super Bowl, so clearly he's got the skins on the wall as a receiver coach.
Your thoughts on the coaching staff, and piggyback on CJ, he's proven he can develop wide receiver talent in the NFL.
Well, kind of like Jude was saying, I think you see the sacrifice Peyton made with the Greenbrier. I think it's the coaches let go. McMahon, Joe Vitt, those were guys that were close to him. Those were guys that had been his guys for some time now. But I think toward the end of the year, these last 3 seasons, the pressure's been ratcheted up. It wasn't quite as emotional at the end of this year as it was last year with that 60-minute press conference. But you see Peyton, I think, feeling the heat a little bit. So that's where these changes come in. And like he was saying, I think guys that teach can go a long way. You look at Mike Nolan's track record and the stops that he's had as a defensive coordinator and linebacker coach, and I think 9 different NFL teams. And the idea of bringing him together with a guy like Dennis Allen, who Dennis Allen certainly made some improvements and really brought for his roster on that defense. I think he got just about the most he could out of that unit. The numbers weren't necessarily there, but there was more pass rush in critical times. He mixed it up personnel-wise. He mixed it up formation-wise. I think he did a lot of good things. So combining him with Nolan at that linebacker spot, I think can be a really good move.
Chris, free agency is just right around the corner. I don't see the Saints tagging anyone with a franchise tag. Most critical need you think the Saints have to fill in free agency? Now, we know the formula has been in the past. Go out to free agency, try to fill needs so that you have the ability in the draft to be able to take the best available player. You have a little bit more money to play with this year, somewhere between 30 and 36 million, depending on what particular site you read. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think as far as free agency, it's going to be defensive back again. It's unfortunate the injuries that happened last year because you look at Delvin Breaux, he had a great rookie year, but then last year, not convinced he was really above 85%, maybe 80% at any point. He gets hurt in game one. He comes back. He's a fighter. He wants to be back on the field. But leaves a question mark. Was he playing hurt? Did that caused the dip in play? Or is it a bit of a sophomore slump? Did he kind of average out to what he really is as a player? Then you look at P.J. Williams, gets hurt in game two. In his third year of his contract, you still don't know what you necessarily have. So I think a cornerback is a big need. And obviously, it's going to cost some money, but Nick Fairley is a guy that was very disruptive this year, had his best NFL season. He was motivated, though, last year. He's going to want the money this year, and you've got to keep him motivated. But I think you see the results with him. He seemed to mesh really well with Cam Jordan and that defensive line. So hopefully Fairley is a guy that they can retain and then keep building on the defensive side of the ball.
866-3200 the phone number. If you would, piggyback on Nick Fairley, your thoughts on what it's going to take to retain him and also the needs going into this free agency.
We had some reports this week talking about in the $9.5 million a year range. That scares me because I like a Nick Fairley who's motivated to earn his paycheck. I like Nick Fairley playing for incentives. I don't know if I like him being paid the money that he may have to receive. And because you like Sheldon Rankins from what you've seen so far, I mentioned Onyemata and Davis, and you've got good players there. I don't necessarily know you want to bank in Fairley because you've got young talent there, and maybe you can find a free agent who's cheaper to complement that rotation and group and have motivated players. I think that's important. It's so crucial that the Saints pay the right people.
Yes.
No more, and he's not a Junior Gillette, mind you, but no more Junior Gillette type situations. And going back to what Chris said, there's no question cornerback has to be number one because that's what you can answer in free agency. Today, the Texans apparently a report coming out saying that they're not going to tag A.J. Bouye. That's the type of guy that you need in here. They need a number one corner. Pay that money for a guy who's rock solid, who takes care of one side of the field so Delvin Breaux can develop, and you hope guys like P.J. Williams and a couple of other injured players that are young and have talent can come back without the pressure of having to perform and play every snap.
I definitely agree. And of course, you also have to look at the guard position. To me, when you look at free agency, yes, they can go in the draft and get a guard, but the unknown right now on the right side of that offensive line, I think that you've got to have someone that can come in and perform immediately. If ultimately Jari Evans retires, if he outprices himself or he decides not to come back to New Orleans, and then of course the situation with Zach Reed. Both guys played very, very well last year. Both guys were healthy. It was something that I don't think anyone really expected. But with that said, I think you've got to really address that in free agency. And you might be, it looks like the guard position is a fairly strong position in free agency as well.
Yeah, in a sense, you're playing with fire there because when it goes for Evans and when it goes for Sharif, it goes. And you've got a big hole there. Andrews Pete did well at left guard on the other side of the line. And as much stuff as we gave that offensive line in the preseason, they really performed well. But like you said, it's got to be addressed because that's not a position you want to be in, especially this year, and what could be Drew Brees' last year and really a make-or-break season for him.
Well, you mentioned that. We're going to go to the calls in just one moment. Is it a make-or-break season? Brees playing on a one-year deal. Looks like Peyton, again, with all his flirtation with any city on the West Coast, wanting to go out and coach elsewhere. People believe this is a one-year deal for both of them, that if they don't get to the playoffs this year, we don't see a team that is on the rise, that we may see a breakup between the Saints and Peyton, and ultimately Brees may test the free agency market. Others say Brees will be here until he retires, and Peyton's not going anywhere. What are your thoughts?
I do think it's make or break, and I think the Brees and Peyton situation goes hand in hand. They have a good year. Maybe you bring Brees back, then maybe you start to look at Peyton. He's signed through 2020, but still, it doesn't feel like it. So you have a good year. Maybe Brees comes back. Peyton's long-term, you start to look to the future, draft a quarterback. You have a bad year, then all of a sudden, Brees is looking for another avenue. Peyton's gone, and then all of a sudden, you are back behind square one and trying to find some stability and find a head coach and what direction you want to go going forward. So let's make or break.
Right. I know you talk about this all the time on your radio show. What are your thoughts?
No question about it. It's been about this season coming up for a couple of years, although Sean Payton expected more out of his team last year. 10 wins and/or playoffs. He stays, Brees stays. If not, the thing's going to get blown up. I don't think there's any doubt about that because they have money to spend, another draft to work with, and there are expectations, and I think it goes all the way to the top. We don't know where the top is in the organization anymore necessarily, but I think there's expectations that say if Sean Payton in particular doesn't get the job done with this team, and we've seen the offseason start with him having a different focus on trying to shake things up, then he'll be gone.
You know what's amazing as we go to the phone lines? On one side of the ledger, we have a franchise that has had success, that has won a Super Bowl, that has a coach that's won a Super Bowl, that's got skills on the wall, and they're on the hot seat. But on the other side, the other franchise has really done nothing, has been mired in mediocrity. There doesn't seem to be a hot seat for Dell Demps or Alvin Gentry. It's just amazing. Again, the tale of two franchises on Airline Drive, the more successful franchise where, again, the fan base is watching every single move they make. There's a push to make sure that this is the year you get over the hump. The other one, you know what? We'll kind of see what happens. I would like to see, again, a focus on both franchises with a winning attitude going forward. DJ is in New Orleans East. DJ, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, Eric, and you guys.
DJ.
A couple of questions, one for the Saints and one for the Pelicans. As far as the Saints are concerned, I was thinking that might, try to get who's the lineman that they're trying to keep fairly. I'm thinking they're going to offer the guy $30 million for 4 years and see if that's enough to keep him here. And I wanted to ask what you thought about that. And also, as far as the Pelicans are concerned, would you think that they're going to have to pay Drew Holiday $20 million in order to keep him? And I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks so much.
Well, starting with fairly, I've addressed my concerns already. I think it's about guaranteed money, not what the actual years and total number is going to be. If I'm the Saints, I want protection, and I say, hey, if you want to make the big money, we're going to go a certain level with the guaranteed money, but it has to be trust both ways. I know you don't want to play for incentives, but we still want you to earn it. We will pay you this amount if you perform for the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it's going to be. But I think the Saints need to be very careful when it comes to the amount of guaranteed money they put out for somebody like that.
And Drew Holiday?
Drew Holiday, I really don't know what the market's going to say about Drew Holiday at the end of the season as to how he should be as a piece for the future. But he's a good player, and he's a solid guy who fits in the system because I think he can fit in any system. He's a versatile guard, and it looks like he's healthy. But I think you almost have to keep him at this point through the rest of the season to find out if he does stay healthy and he does perform well, that can give you a better idea. Right now, he's got an incomplete grade.
Chris, to me, I think you almost got to overpay for both guys.
I think so. I think with Fairley, it's a situation I'm not necessarily mad if you pay him big, but at the same time, it does worry you. But it's the way he played, he more or less deserves it, and he's going to have some suitors out there in the market. And same with Drew Holiday. You look at last year's market, and Mike Conley Jr. gets a 5-year, $150 million contract. I don't think Drew's going to call for that because, or at least I don't think New Orleans would give him that because you've got Anthony Davis, and really the Grizzlies are in a situation where it's Conley and Gasol and sometimes Chandler Parsons, so they're going to give him that money. But Drew's going to come with a price tag. You've already got some suitors. You've already got the 76ers who he's once played for. They've got some young pieces. They've shown promise. I don't know if Drew Holiday's. It's almost like a mirror image of the Pelicans sometimes, except they seem to be moving in the right direction. But they've already put it out there. They're interested in Drew Holiday, so there's going to be a price tag for him for sure. You're going to have to pay some big dollars.
Let's go to Martin in Destrehan. Martin, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sport. Hey, Martin.
Hey, how you doing, fellas?
Doing fine. Turn it off for me, please.
I love your show, man. How you doing?
Thank you.
All right, my question is, just by chance, I know we need help on defense, but if Leonard Fournette was to fall to number 11 in the draft, do you think this should take him? And I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Martin. It's been a question I get on my radio show. I know you get on yours. I know you're hearing it all the time. Will the Saints pick Leonard Fournette if he falls? I don't think he'll fall to 11, number one. But it's an interesting scenario because the Saints desperately need help on the defensive side of the ball. You got a local guy who obviously can be a game changer in the NFL at a position now that has some value at the running back position. I've always said that a Leonard Fournette, if you bring him in and you utilize him correctly, can extend Drew Brees' career with a great defense. But the question is, when you're looking at what you really need right now, which is a premier pass rusher and help on defense, can you afford a Leonard Fournette?
No, I don't think you can pick him at 11 because we'll see what they do in free agency, but they won't fill all the holes, and they won't fill the holes on the defensive side. I think more than likely the Saints are going to wind up getting their edge pass rusher in the first round at 11. And there's going to be a good 1 or 2 or 3 there. And if Leonard Fournette had played 3 years of college and not had any injury issues, I think it makes the decision a little bit harder. But his running style, he wants to run over people. Will he adapt in the NFL to keep himself healthier? If you knew a little bit more about that, it's a tougher decision. And even then, the Saints, I think the answer in the end would still be no.
Chris?
I think, the Saints, it's never been the Saints' MO to go local, just to go local. I don't think it fits. And you look at that offense, and no matter how well Mark Ingram runs some games, no matter how well Tim Hightower runs some games, that is going to be Sean Payton calling the plays, and that's going to be Drew Brees' offense. They've shown the tendency to go a little more run-heavy sometimes, but I don't think Leonard Fournette's style, I don't think his use would be the best for that draft pick right there. There are bigger needs. And I think Mark Ingram, paired with another good running back, he's shown the ability to stay healthy if you're not necessarily pounding him 20 carries a game. And so I think they're fine at that position right now. He's shown the versatility. Other guys have shown versatility. I don't think Fournette's the best use of that pick right there, especially given what you can do on the other side of the ball.
Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. I just got a question, a couple for you. What's your thoughts on maybe bringing in Mario Williams like we did with Nick Fairley, and we might be able to get him at a cheap price? And also my concern is safety because, Vaccaro's playing on a contract year, and we only got Von Bell, and if the other safety walks because we can't pay him anymore, we're pretty much thin at that position. We got no backup. So kind of hear your thoughts on it. I hang up and listen.
Mario Williams?
Mario Williams, I wouldn't have a problem with if you can get him on a fairly type of deal, show him motivation. I think there's still gas left in that tank. And I don't think there's really much downside depending on how much money you can save getting him there. As far as the safety, maybe 2 months ago.
You still got Eric Harris back there.
Right. And maybe 2 months ago, I was hoping Jamal Adams would be a guy, but that dude shot up the draft board so fast. Yes. He's going to be gone probably top 5. Maybe a Jabril Peppers, who's kind of a hybrid type of guy. The Saints like a lot of 3 safety packages. I think he can play in the box and be a decent run stopper. If they so feel inclined, that's not a bad pick at 11. It just depends on whether you want that safety or that pass rusher and what the future plans hold for Vaccaro.
No, safety first. I think trading back up into the second round last year for Von Bell means you need to let that play out. Although I don't think the returns were all that great for him playing a lot as a rookie and being an impact guy. Sean Payton asked a little bit more of him, publicly speaking about his season when they wrapped up, so we'll see. But again, it's one of those situations where Mario Williams, he was drafted right before Reggie Bush. How long ago was that?
Yeah.
2006. That's a long time. He's a big physical defensive end, and Miami just let him go. A Miami team that was terrible against the run last year. If he's not an elite pass rusher anymore, and he's coming off a team that thinks that he can't help them improve a bad run defense, that tells you a lot.
We apologize for the calls we couldn't get to tonight. Please feel free to call again next week. Special thanks to our guests, Chris Hagan and also Jude Young. Great job tonight, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, Friday nights, 9 o'clock statewide. That's on Pelican Sports Television. You can catch me on the radio, 990 AM WGSO. That's weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. You can download the podcast, listen live at ericasher.com, and all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests, Chris Hagan and also Jude Young. Also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Dotson, Kenny Juneau, Naila Jones, Richard King, Philip Williamson, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.